add them.
Good afternoon, folks. Hi. Let me see. I think that microphones and cameras should be enabled for folks. Please put in the chat if you're experiencing any errors. But hello, I'm Dejan. I'm going to be leading us today alongside our consultant, Deidre here. Deidre, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Well, I'm going to be pulling up her slides, and while I get that going, if you want to go ahead and just give a brief introduction of yourself, Deidre.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Deedra Hanekamp. I have worked in several different industries now. I'm an author and an artist. Currently, I run D&H Consulting LLC, and I've had the pleasure of working with Mountain Association and also having consultants work with me from their group. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here today and to do this workshop. And hopefully, I can inspire those of you who are either starting a business or maybe you've started a business and feel stuck and give you some encouragement as we go through a little bit of information today.
Yes, great. So as you all have seen, this is one of our consultants who's leading our Learning with an Expert series. So we're hoping that we're able just to provide a space for some of our consultants to share their goodies out here to our communities. And so Deidre is going to lead us through finding our voice. And I do have this pulled up. So if you're ready, I can go ahead and share that for you.
Yes, I'm ready.
Good. Try that. Green.
So as you can see, our title today is Finding Your Voice, Building a Business that Reflects Who You Are. It can be really hard when you're looking at starting a business to really know what you want to do and to develop a working business plan and to not lose your unique voice in the process of doing that. So our workshop objectives on the next slide, if you don't mind bringing that up, we're going to kind of guide you building a business. Being authentic, exploring your personal values, skills, and resources. And I wanted to share a little bit about the business my husband and I co-own, Hanekamp Manor Bikes and Books. And at this point, I want to talk about that because we started it in the middle of COVID, and the way we started it was probably a very unique process. He had lost his job, and we were literally brainstorming, what can we do? What business can we start in the middle of a pandemic? What skills do we have? And these are questions that you might be asking yourself. How do I start a business? What business should I start? I did something just that's second nature to me. I made a checklist. Okay, what tools do we have? What skills do we have? And what can we offer people? What is the need that people have that we can fill? And I sent my husband out literally to the storage shed and I said, go out there and see what you have and come back and tell me what we have to work with. And he said, well, I was a bicycle mechanic and I have all the bicycle tools to start this business. And that's where we started. And that's really where you start. What skills, what tools do you already have? A lot of times there's a barrier to entry for entrepreneurs. They think that they have to buy all new tools or they have to start from scratch. Why not start with what you already have? That's unique to you. It's something you already know. Maybe you already have all the tools for it and the skills for it. But do you have the customers? So that brings us to the next slide, the operational compass overview. And I wanted to say here, We have unique views, we have unique businesses, and our branding is unique to each business. But we also need to have an industry understanding. Sometimes when you start a business and you're doing your business plan, they tell you to go look at your competitors. And, we think of competition as in sports where everybody's fighting to win. Well, competition in business doesn't really look that way. We are all seeking the same clients, but it's okay to be specialized. I worked in the crochet industry for a while. I was a crochet artisan, and I realized I can't crochet everything that's out there. I had to look inside myself and say, what are my capabilities? What's my limit? What can I produce? So if you're making a product, how much of a product and what product can you make to a standard of excellence? If you're doing a service, how much of that service can you provide excellent? You could either do everything mediocre or you can excel in key specific things. Find what you can excel at because you'll lose more customers by not offering good quality control. And I learned that in my crochet. I learned that quality control is key to keeping your brand relevant, and you have to have a good working relationship within your industry. I am not good with thread. I cannot make doilies to a standard of excellence. I can make them, but mine tended to fall apart. I partnered with a lady that excelled at making, doilies, and I specialized in a different type. I did baby booties, dog apparel. She had her niche market, I had mine, and we had a respect and a mutual understanding that when I couldn't fill my client's need, I sent them to her because she could. Could I make a doily? Yes. Would it fall apart? Unfortunately, yes. And I'll be honest and say that I would rather send a client to someone who can make that item that fills their need than to shame myself in making an inferior good that damages my brand. And that's something as you start to define your business, you need to ask yourself, what am I excelling at? And if you cannot excel at, say, 50 things within that industry, if you're only excelling at 10, you need to look for opportunities to either be able to refer directly to another person that's excelling where you're weak, or partner with them and be able to bring them in and say that you can. Um, in the writing industry, like if they would come to me, I could either take the editing client or I can outsource that to someone that would be seen as my competitor, but at that point they become a part of my team. So you can outsource work. But the key is, what is your standard of excellence? You have to have checks and balances. So your unique view, this is unique to you in your industry, the view of your industry and the view of the item that you're either creating or the service you're providing. What is the standard? There's an industry standard and then there's a personal standard. Sometimes the industry may have a minimum standard that you can meet, but your personal standard, you might say, yes, I can meet the minimum, but my personal standard is higher than that. That's what I'm going to gauge my performance against. That helps define your market, your customer base, because you're looking at what you're excelling at and you're going to target from that point your advertising to bring in those customers that are looking for that specific thing you excel at. You don't want broad marketing, you need more niche targeted marketing. And you might be asking yourself right now, what does that look like? Well, in my experience in the crochet industry, I would put out flyers that stated clearly that I would take on clients for custom crochet of baby booties, dog apparel. And in my writing industry, I knew that I excelled in developmental editing. My grammar and my spelling is very weak. That's line editing or a different form of editing. It's like basic edits. Developmental editing is story development. That's where I excelled. When I target market, when I made ads, it was for people who were struggling with their plot or with very specific things, specific needs within that industry. If someone came to me as a client and said, I need line edits, I would be honest and say that's not something I excel at, but I had made friends with at least 5 other editors, and I felt confident and comfortable saying, I'm going to refer you to this person. You can either go to them directly or I can subcontract. If you would feel more comfortable, I'll create a contract where I'm allowing them to work on your work under me. There's ways that you can bridge that gap. And again, I want to reiterate, I feel like sometimes we think that competitor, we're going to look at our competition in the industry. I feel like that creates a poor view of what's really happening. You're not competing with these people per se. It's not a win or lose situation. That competition just means that they're also feeling a need that you're feeling. And it's okay to understand that maybe your limit is I can only make 100 of this product. And when you reach that, you reach the person that's working in that same niche industry and you say to them, hey, I've reached the limit of what I can produce. Can I send you some clients? Because you're not really competing with them. It's not win or lose. You are working within an industry to create support, and you find your support within your industry. You don't compete with them. You're not out to crush the competition. No, you're out to work with your competition. So your standards can be upheld. Their standards can be upheld. Everyone has a little slice of the pie that they excel at. And at the end of the day, every client has their needs met because they can find what they're looking for. So, and that's based on your knowledge, your skills, and even your physical resources and your person. This is also where I like to talk about my personal limits, my disability. As we move in to the next slide, things that are going to go into our operational compass. This is personal views, experiences, things that have taught you empathy for your client, but also things that sometimes it humbles us. We have to look at our limits and we have to be honest with ourselves, especially when you start a business, especially if you're producing the product. What are my limits? Can I meet the demand for the good? One year I got into trouble and I was new to my disability. I didn't know my physical limits. I'd started my crochet business and I had found a marketable good that everybody wanted at Christmas. It was a crochet candy cane cover. I took an order for 100 of them. I had no idea the physical impact it would have on me. I literally removed that from my crochet rep, well, I can't say that word, my book. I had a book of things I would make. No, I pulled that out because when I hit 90, I made it to 90. This was for one customer. They ordered 100 of these. I hit the number 90 and my fingers were bleeding. I had tape on my fingers. I was crying. I was at my physical limit. And I asked myself, what have I got into? Can I even do this? Is this business worth what it's physically costing me at this point? There was no one else making those. And I thought, oh, I'll fill this need. I found out quickly there's a reason no one was making those. It's not that they're not cute. It's not that people don't want to buy them. It's that it's very labor intensive and it's hard on your hands. And people want them in quantities that one person just cannot make. And that sometimes happens. So before you get into trouble, if you're going to make a good, ask yourself, how many of these can I make? I didn't ask that question. I just jumped in and said, oh, $1 an item. Sure, I can make 100 of those. I found out the hard way. I cannot make 100. And what would have happened if I'd had 50 clients wanting 100 of those? I got to 90 and I was just done with life. I was done with my business. I couldn't do it. So before you get to a point where you're in trouble because you reach a physical limit, ask yourself, can I produce an unrealistic amount? You know, set a realistic amount. If you can do 25 of the item, how long does it take you? Can you maintain that? What if that 25 turns into 5 customers wanting 25? When do you hire someone? What happens if you can't meet the need of your client, but you also can't afford to hire someone? That's the real talk of business. It can be hard and it can be scary. And I feel like that is what we run into when we start a business, but nobody has mentored us. And I think that's why it's important to connect with Mountain Association and get that one-on-one personal time with a consultant that can walk you through thinking through what could happen and making adjustments on paper in your business plan before you get to that point where you're crying and thinking, what have I done? And then there's customers wanting stuff you can't provide. So again, so right now I invite you to take some time and reflect on your limits, reflect on what you see your product or your service looking like. Now, one of the things that happens in service sometimes when you're physically meeting with someone, and I was nervous going into this because I thought about the topics to talk about, and there's some uncomfortable topics, but let's be real. If you're creating a service, you meet with people. Yes, we can do things virtually like we are today, but what happens if you need to meet in person? When you go to meet with someone, and this is something that my consultant brought up to me and we've discussed, when you're in a meeting, are you in a public place? Are there other people that can see your conduct and their conduct? In the industry, in the writing industry, I'm going to be blunt, and this is an uncomfortable conversation, but I had to write in to some of my contracts a no sexual harassment clause. It is my exit clause. Anything that would be inappropriate or make my person feel in danger, I can go back to that clause and say, I don't tolerate harassment or sexual harassment. I terminate this client. And I've had to do that. Um, and I've had clients try to put me into very uncomfortable situations. If you feel unsafe, you need to think about meetings. How will you conduct yourself? How will you protect your person? It's okay to have set in place boundaries, personal boundaries for your person. If you're uncomfortable having someone touch you, you have every right to say, we're going to keep a professional distance from one another. But what do you do when someone violates your boundary? That's why you have to have very specific language in your contracts that allows you to say, I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm sorry, we're going to terminate this. And if you're working for someone else, say you're consulting and you're working for another group, you go to that person that you're consulting for, that group you're working with, and you say, this is what happened. This is why I'm uncomfortable. Could you help me terminate this in a respectful manner? And it's okay to do that. Always look for ways to protect your person. I would never advocate for the sake of making money, doing anything that would make you feel like you're in danger or that you're being disrespected. So please also, during the time that you're thinking about your operational compass, think about what protects you as a person. Where are you going to meet with your clients? What distance will you keep from them? How will you keep accountability for both of you? And what things will you not allow them to send to you? That's another big one that I ran into. Um, we have to identify that that comfort zone for us. In editing, sometimes we have to edit things that makes us feel uncomfortable. I had to set a standard because of some of my experiences in the past to protect my mental health. please be clear, with the people you work with, what your limits are. I've had to pass clients to other editors because it was the stuff they write, they have a right to write it, but I can't. It would make me cry. It would upset me emotionally. I couldn't edit something that I was having such an emotional response to. For my sake and for the betterment of their product, their editing needs, they needed to go to someone else. Be honest, be open, reflect on that ahead of time. Think about respectful ways that you can have a boundary and instill that boundary and use that boundary, but also get that client moving forward. So again, as we move into part 2, if you'll bring that slide up about knowledge and skills, you have your current skill level. So you're going to identify your skills and your knowledge. Now you're going to have skills that you're really strong in. You're going to have knowledge that you feel secure in, but there might be areas that you need to develop. Navigating that as you set up your business, you can set your business up and focus right now on what you can do. When I set up my editing business, I knew I was good with developmental editing. I have currently been taking classes and taking action on my weaknesses. I'm trying to learn sentence structure and better spelling techniques and grammar. That these are things I can work on. So your skills and your knowledge can grow. You start where you're at and you start learning as you go, and build on the skills you currently have, and you can work towards new skills. So you can use that to shape your branding. Again, I'll go back to when I was crocheting, I had things I excelled at. I was really good with dog jackets. My branding looked different as my business grew. My branding changed. It went from just a very generic branding. As you can see in the slides today, I haven't added any of the bells and whistles. This is very generic. It's just plain. So we start out in business, it might look black and white plain. You're going to want to look at colors. What colors do you like? What represents your business? Branding is like logo, colors. You might even have a catchphrase that's specific, but you're going to want to also convey specifically what you're good at. You don't want to give such a broad answer that everybody thinks that you're right for them. You're looking for an actual client that needs the skills you currently have. I wouldn't target someone for grammar and spelling needs. I also wouldn't, in my crochet business, I wouldn't target someone that wants fine doilies. I want to be intentional with my branding to where it's clear that I'm really good right here at this level. This is where I'm good at. What's a target market? Attracting customers. Target markets are very specific. They are specific to your skills and knowledge. That's a little niche. It's a slice of the pie. I'm going to go back to the writing industry because it's so varied. We, as an industry, we're called the writing industry. But when you break it down, you have fiction, you have nonfiction, and then there's levels underneath that. In most industries, you will have your main industry, but then you have subsectors of that industry that you work within. So you want to really think about where you fit into that target market. As a writer, I write a specific genre. I like to write in fiction. I like young adult fiction. That's where I fit. The age range for my target market is 13 to 18. And I'm going to tell a really embarrassing story from when I first started writing. I thought that I could submit my work to any anthology. An anthology is where they take different writers' little short stories and they put them together, usually into a compilation. And I thought, well, I can just submit anywhere. I made a mistake, not once, not twice, 7 times, of submitting my work. And yes, it was taken, it was put into the anthology, and I realized by the 7th time, I can't market these books. When you have an age range of 13 and up, and someone puts in something that would be considered adult content into the same anthology, how am I supposed to market this book? Uh-oh. You cannot market adult content to a 13-year-old. I made a mistake. I made the mistake of thinking that it didn't matter where my work was represented. Oh, the backlash that I got. It was very embarrassing. And it was a learning moment for me. It opened my eyes to why target market also means that you look at the age range of the person you're producing the product for. And why does that matter? Well, there's some legalities. As you progress building your business, you need to look at legal ramifications of not adhering to the law. And you also need to look at ways that maybe you could be misrepresenting your brand unintentionally, like me. Mine was young adult. I unintentionally had my work put in with adult content. And I just didn't do enough research. That fell back on me as the author. I should have looked at the anthology and said, my work doesn't belong in there. I didn't do that. That was my bad. So, target marketing. Again, attracting those customers. Your skills need to be strong, your knowledge needs to be strong, and you need to make sure that target market that you're branding for and that you're seeking out and putting your ads in front of actually meets the demographic of what you're working with. Thank you for the next slide. So my consulting business, I come up with the business name, D&H Consulting LLC, and I decided that I wanted to do consulting. When I first started the consulting business, I wanted to do consulting for just business industry. And then I realized maybe I need to be a little more intentional because I work within the writing industry. That's where I excel. So I have shifted gears. And one of the reasons why everything is kind of bland right now is I don't have colors. I don't have a look yet for my business. I'm still developing D&H Consulting LLC. I'm figuring it out as I go. What do I want this to look like? The business development for me right now, I'm focused on book publication, the writing industry. I need to look at my colors. I need to look at my logo. And I have discovered watching the writing industry that logos, before you make a logo, you need to make sure that you are not infringing on copyright. There's things I didn't know when I first started out. Yes, your typeface, the font you use can be copywritten, and sometimes you can't use that copywritten font in your logo, especially if you want to trademark it. So thinking about that, I'm kind of at a standstill for my logo. I might need some help with that. That's where going to an industry professional, getting a consultant to consult with to help you work through that legality and finding what is acceptable. What can I actually use? If you want to trademark your logo, here's something you need to know. Before you can trademark that, you need to make sure that you wouldn't be violating the terms of use for the font, for the colorization, for the depiction. So again, getting a consultant at that point that specializes in developing logos is very much paramount. And that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. I will probably be reaching out and looking for a consultant to help with that. Someone asked, how can you know that? How can you know? Okay, when you go to use a font, if you purchase a font, like if you're going to make a logo, here's something that came up in the writing industry and why I know this. This lady went and trademarked a word. Some people might find it offensive. I will not say the word. It created a backlash. It was a word. Then she wanted, instead of the specific word, she wanted to trademark, in which they had gave her a trademark on the word. She wanted to trademark when they come back and said, you can't trademark just a word. That's a word that everybody uses. She came back and said, let me stylize it and I want to put it in this font and I want to trademark it like this. the person she purchased the font from, in their terms of use, said that you cannot trademark my font. She did not read that. There is a lawsuit against her because she tried to trademark something that when she purchased it, she signed an agreement and agreed that that font is not to be trademarked. So that's why it's really important to read the terms of use. Everything that you use when you're creating your business brand, you need to read the terms of use. If you're developing products and you want to put visuals on it, so you go and you purchase a visual. I'm going to make a cover for a book. I purchase a picture of a woman. When you purchase that picture, it's like to use it specifically. They're selling it for use to be developed into a cover art. There is actually a paragraph that will tell you terms of use. So if you don't read terms of use, you can get into legal issues. So that's another thing. When you're starting your business, definitely look at terms of use. And that brings us into ethics as well. And again, that comes back to that compass, your operational compass. You have to have ethics. Now, I'm going to talk about this because it's something happening right now in a local community. A small business has run into an ethical problem. It's a legal and ethical problem. Ethically, they have said, I'm not going to sell to underage children and we're not going to carry this product. Well, then the law has also come in line with their ethics and said, you're not allowed to do this. And it's a vape shop. And right now they are closing their doors because the law is applicable to them. But there are other business models that are not performing legally or ethically. They are using their position to get away with selling to underage vape users what is now considered illegal vapes. They're not being held to the standard. They've been reported and they're not being held to the legal standard that this small business is being held to. This small business is going to close. Now, they could be unethical and they could say, I'm going to do what these other people are doing and I'll take whatever ramifications or fines that they give me, but they have chosen not to do that. So this is important. You need to know legal laws, but you also need to know what your inner working says. Like, what is your operational compass? Are you going to adhere to the law even when it costs you your business? Because that's what's happening to them. They are losing their business because of a law that while other people are violating that law and paying fines, they're just not going to do that. They said, no, this is the law. This is the standard. I'm not going to do what I see the other industry people doing. So, I mean, that's hard. This is hard, real talk from real businesses, and it has real impacts. And sometimes, unfortunately, like for that business, their business is closing. And even though I don't use vapes, that hurts me as a business owner. It hurts my heart for them. I have great respect and empathy for them because they put their heart into making this business that they now have to close because they're not going to break the law. And I respect that. So, um, yeah. Oh, sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent there. But yeah, as I come back to looking at developing your business, we've moved on to part 3, the tools, the certifications, skills, knowledge, support system. Your support system can be potential clients, but I forgot to mention it also can be your competition. Sometimes those people that are working in the industry can be your greatest asset because you lend to one another what we call you lend your my mind just went blank. Sorry about that. Like you stand behind someone, you lend them authority, you give them a sense of placement within the industry. The greatest example of that, when I first started writing, I'm going to be honest, as an author, I have no degree. I do not have a writing degree. I did not finish college. My skills, I took classes online to learn how to write better. I took some targeted writing courses, and I've got some basic office certifications. I needed help within the industry to learn the industry, so I reached out to what would be considered my competition. I made friends with Susan Tinsdale. She is an amazing romance writer and author, and she is so, so supportive. If you have a question, you can ask her, and she does not look down on you. And she has lent to me her credibility. That's it. And when she sends people to me and she says, "Hey, go over there and talk to Deidre about young adult," eh, writing in the young adult industry. And I can say, "Go talk to Susan. She's the best in the romance industry." We lend credibility, and that makes our support system stronger. And sometimes our clients come out of that support system too. I have a friend, she's an amazing, just amazing person, and she's used my services as a developmental editor. She came to me out of a group. We were supportive. It was a writing group, and she reached out to me. Actually, she started my editing journey. I started an editing business because of Amber. Amber said, "Deidre, I want to work with you. I want you to help me develop my story." She went from being my competition, being someone that was within the writing work group that we were in. It was like a developmental work group. It just became a great friendship, and she's a client now. She was my potential client before, but she became that client now. And she's my competition. Yes, she writes young adults. So sometimes our books go head to head. Sometimes we actually will publish stuff that will be put up against one another. There are certain things that you can enter contest. There's things in the writing world you can do. And she and I have gone head to head, but we've stayed friends. She stayed a client. We lend one another that credibility, and we support one another. That's what a support system looks like. Even if you're directly competing with one another, it means having a mutual industry respect. So, um, oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I get off on tangents and I start thinking about working within multiple industries. That support system is so paramount. And I've seen it in the crochet industry, I've seen it in the writing industry, I've seen it in the bicycle industry. My husband does the bicycle repairs. He and I actually talked about that. We have a competitor, and the competitor is not necessarily fond of my husband. My husband's not necessarily fond of him. But guess what they do? They send customers to one another, because at the end of the day, it's not about liking one another, it's about having an industry respect. That that other person has a niche market for high-end bikes. We do not. We do Walmart bikes. We do like the low-end bikes. You have to respect the other people in your industry enough that even if you have disagreements, or maybe you just don't jive, you don't hang out in the same realm, you have to respect them in the industry and say, "You know what, at the end of the day, this person's the best person for me to send that client to. No matter how I feel about them personally, that is an amazing person to fill this need for my client. Refer them on." Um, that one's hard because, yeah, sometimes in industries we don't like one another. You're not going to always find friendships. Sometimes it's just going to be mutual respect. That's still a support system. That's still respect within your industry. It doesn't mean you change your feelings about one another. It just means that you have a respect for the work that you do. So, yeah, that one's hard. That's a difficult one. And I'm sure you're going to find clients that are difficult as well. And I guess here's a good place to say you're going to see negative numbers. There's going to be the red's going to happen. Every business has a down month, and sometimes you have a year, an entire year that you sit at a negative. This year, I'm going to disclose this about the bike shop. We're at a negative $300 coming out of 2025. We were in the red. That happens. The way that you come back from that is to look at what worked, what didn't work, and then you ask yourself, do I go forward? If when you hit a spot to where the numbers are negative, you have a client do a chargeback, you get 5 bad reviews, or maybe you're getting input that's very discouraging, if you stop at that point, then you really have failed. Everyone is going to hit a point where you feel like a failure. And sometimes on paper, you look like a failure. And I'm not going to lie, I cried. I cried over the negative number, and I'm like, oh, I'm such a failure. And then I stopped and I reassessed, and I said, wait a minute, that's not failing. Failing is when you stop adjusting and moving forward. I leaned into our support system. We have had some wonderful business consultations. Mountain Association gave us a wonderful opportunity to have a consultant work with us, and it helped redirect our vision. We assessed where we were going wrong, and that's what consulting with someone and getting that support system does. It helps you get a visual on where did we go wrong? How can we adjust? How can I move forward? We realized, looking at it, that our physical location is now not as lucrative as it could be. And that's another hard part. Where do you put your business? Well, we put our business right smack dab in the middle of a floodplain. We have now been flooded twice, and we have lost a lot of the populace. That means our customers don't live here anymore. They are leaving our area. What happens when your physical location is starting to lose your customer base? Unfortunately, you need to readjust. You need to look at, where do I go from here? We have leaned into online presence, but we also have come to a realization at some point we might need to pick a new physical location. But what does that look like? Well, if you have a specific thing like bicycle repair that you do, you cannot move your shop just anywhere. You need that clientele that actually rides bicycles. So it wouldn't do us any good to move to, say, Alaska. Now, how many people will be riding bicycles in extreme cold? That would take a very, very dedicated bicycle rider. We need to really look at physical location as, where are the bicyclists? How do you find that? You look at your location demographics, your population numbers. You have to move into an area that has your ideal client. And that looks different for everyone. Sometimes that can be a physical location, or for writers, it can be online locations. We can partner with people online that can get our books in front of new readers. So again, that's one of those hard things where you're going to look at numbers. You're going to look at your ideal client. And if you look at yourself, you're your ideal client. In my case, I like working with people who are disabled because I'm disabled. My heart is for people who struggle like I struggle. My husband loves to work in the bicycle industry. He loves to ride bicycles. His ideal client looks like him, someone who's riding a bike for fun. He doesn't compete in the Olympics. He rides it on a daily basis. So you're identifying what your client looks like, and you have to go looking for them. So if you can find where the greatest number of people that need, the need has to be there. You know what I'm saying? They need what you're making. They need your services. That's where you can build a sustainable business. The thing is, sometimes your business will have to move. Sometimes you'll have to shift. And that again is when having a business consultant, connecting with Mountain Association, connecting with resources that can help you get a better vision on your goals, that is paramount. Because you get stuck, everybody gets stuck. These are things that you will unfortunately come across. You're going to see negative numbers. You're going to see trends changing. You're going to see customers being unhappy. Sometimes we just don't perform well. Let's just be honest. Negative reviews. These things happen. They happen to everyone. How do you weather them happening to you? You get support. That's paramount. And you don't lose sight of you. You are your business, especially if you're producing the product or if you're the one personally doing the service. If you're offering up your service, you are the business. Safeguard your person, safeguard your business, but also get the help when you need it. And don't feel like a failure just because you see negative numbers or negative responses. Get insight, get someone that's external to look at it and help you navigate forward. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. And if you have questions or if there's something specifically about branding or marketing that you want to talk about, now's a good time to just think about that. And if we don't talk about it today, we can talk about it in the drop-in on the 11th.
Yeah. Well, while you're wrapping up, I just want to take a moment to thank Deidre for her time and open the floor up for any questions. It, I think one of the participants said that the chat may not be working for everyone.
Mm.
So if you're experiencing any issues with the chat, and don't feel comfortable, speaking out in front of everyone, you can email me directly, and I'll put my email here in the chat as well. So now's a good time for any questions if anyone has any for Deidre. And while we're kind of thinking about the presentation, Jimmy and I both submitted some online resources through a platform called Initiate. They're really interesting and can provide some insight on some of the factors that Deidre taught about today. So if you're interested in looking through those, you can always do so. And then we have a drop-in session scheduled for next Wednesday at 2, which is the same time. So if you have any specific questions about your own brand, how to develop your own voice, you all can always drop in at that time to ask Deidre the specific question.
Yeah, and I'd like to say,
Uh,
you guys, I think I remember that you had, or I tested a thing where it was the business plan and you could input.
Mhm.
Are you guys still doing
mhm.
that with Mountain Association? Is that a resource that you have to help develop the business plans?
Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was gonna say that's the one I put in the chat was a
Okay.
one-page business plan. It's an easy way to
Yes.
start. Sometimes you get a business plan template and they're like 8 pages long and it's overwhelming and then you don't start it. So that's why we like to put the one pager out there because it's accessible. You can do it. They have a longer one available on the site if you want it or need it. And then Dejan put, I think, specifically marketing and branding.
Mhm.
And then the
Choosing the
other
right
link that
location.
Thank you. Yeah. The other link that I put in there is just a tutorial video for getting started on Initiate too, in case you need help getting logged in and such. So, but it's a
And
great tool.
again, I'll be your point person. If you all ever have any issues with that, you can reach out at that email that I put in that chat, and we can make sure that you get logged in into Initiate. There's all different kinds of resources on there. Deidre, go ahead.
Yeah, and another thing, if you are setting up your business, one of the things that Mountain Association had, I think, offered a workshop on, I hate to say, when you die, who takes over your business? That's one of those things you need to know how to leave your business to someone else. I think that that's something to think about. It's not exactly a happy thought, but these are hard things as you start a business. What do you do if you do pass away? What happens to your business? And disability, disability insurance, covering yourself in case of injury. My husband had, uh, this is kind of graphic, so I'll just say he hurt himself with a screwdriver. Let's put it that way, while he was working on a bicycle, and that limited his working capabilities for a while. These things happen. Injuries happen in your workplace. If you are your own boss, you do need to know what to do to make sure you have appropriate coverage for that. So that's another thing. I really feel that Mountain Association did a great thing offering those workshops on how to kind of, the legacy workshops, I believe is what it was. No.
Yeah, and kind of add some light about resources here at Mountain Association. We have a couple of different branches where you can access resources. The first is our lending service. We have lenders that are able to walk you through what offerings we have and the different selections on that. We also have a business support services team, which I'm a part of. I'm a business support specialist. And our team really works with organizations and entrepreneurs to fill in the gaps that they have running their business, whether it be marketing, strategic planning, like Deidre has mentioned. We have consulting services, and we also have a needs assessment to help you identify maybe a good starting place if you're not too sure about that. And then we also have an energy department team that can provide a bill review and examine, as long as your commercial space isn't also your residential space, then they're able to come in and look at efficiencies and make any recommendations and potentially even have a service like a kind of similarly like consulting services with our energy team. And so, like I said, if you guys have any questions about any of that, I have put my email in the chat. And then I've also just put a brief survey with less than, I think maybe 10 questions, but it's not that long at all. Just about your experience with today's workshop and any interest for further workshops that you all may have in the future. Are there any other questions or closing remarks? Well, Deidre, if that's all, then I just sincerely thank you for your time and coming up with this workshop to be able to share with our clients. It's been great. And I will see you all next Wednesday, and you all can drop in and bring any questions that you have for Deidre at that point. Thank you all.
Thank you.